Hello and welcome to the Reality Vomit Podcast, an extension of the Vomit series of podcast. As always, I'm your host, Mac Taylor, here today to talk to you guys about BBUK. That's Big Brother UK, United Kingdom, Season 1, Episodes 1 through... The thing about trying to do this series is that they're not necessarily structured in like Episode 1, 2, blah, blah, blah. There's specials that they do, and then like the days, like they'll do like, like day 4, day 5 update, day 6 update, and then they do like the launch special, which is like an hour, and then like the week recaps and everything. So it's hard to say what the episodes are necessarily. So to avoid confusion, I've broken it down in launch, the day specials, I numbered the days that they were, and then the first week recap, and then day 8 was also the psychologists coming in. So I tried to label them that way because it was just a mess trying to figure out what the hell. I never know, like day-to-day recap, like how long it's going to be and how much I can fit into an episode. So I just went until I had enough notes that I thought was enough that would cover a podcast. So there's no real structure. We're just flying by the seat of our pants on this one. But nevertheless, for those of you who are listening to this are not familiar with how the United Kingdom does their Big Brother and are used to the American format of Big Brother, for the United Kingdom's entire run and the first season of the American run, there are X number of house guests. In this particular season, there are 10. They will each nominate 2 people each week. So everybody gets, 2 votes each week. And whoever has the most amount of nomination votes goes on the block. And it doesn't matter if there is 2 people, 4 people, half the house. There is no limit. It's just whoever has the highest amount of votes, you're up for eviction. And the country votes through, at this point, paying to call in. But, there's an app in the future. They vote throughout the week, and the person with the most votes in the country is then evicted subsequently. So it's pretty different from how we do it nowadays, from how the America did it from season 2 onward. And Canada has adapted our format, and Australia, the past couple of seasons, has adapted our format as well. So and I think China has our format. I couldn't find subtitled versions of that, so I'm not. But it looks like they have an HOH and a veto and things of that nature. So our way of doing Big Brother is becoming quite popular. But the UK has stuck to their guns, and they do Big Brother this way. And in fact, a lot of other countries do it as well, because Big Brother comes from, if I'm not mistaken, Sweden. And, it started a couple years prior to this, I believe. And it's, so many countries have their own version of Big Brother. It's a fairly common thing for a country to have with its, but in the 2000s, reality TV kind of exploded. So, us and UK started doing Big Brother the same year, and also 2000 was the year that Survivor premiered. So 2000 was a big year for reality competition shows. It seems like they were popping up everywhere. But enough of the backstory. Let's go ahead and get into this. Now, their premiere, it was very strange, because there's no, at least from what I've seen so far, there's no host. There's a voiceover guy, like there is in, the guy in our version that goes, last time on Big Brother, that guy. They have that guy, but he just basically says, on day 4, Sada did this, and then it cuts to that thing. There's not really a recap as much as there is just saying what day it is and kind of setting up the scene. But there's no host. There's no Julie, and I think the UK host now's name is Emma Willis. if I'm not mistaken. I'll find out when we get there, but there's no host from what I can tell. So it's just we start the launch special, and they're already in the house, have been in the house for like 4 days, and we're just kind of getting clips that correspond with what the announcer is saying, and then also some introductions to the house guests throughout the whole episode. Instead of doing like all the introductions at the start and then them moving into the house and meeting each other and all that jazz, we just get it throughout the episode, and it kind of interrupts the flow a little bit. I like to know everyone's names at the start, especially when you're taking notes and you're seeing people that you haven't yet gotten their name, and you're like, that person. And it took me a little bit. Now I can see them and I know the names. But on your premiere, you really need to get the names out there. You really need to early so people know who people are. But if you were just to tune in like 5 minutes into this, you would think you missed a lot. But really, you didn't miss anything. So like I said, it was kind of poorly structured just because it was a little chaotic. There wasn't a lot of continuity, or just like there was. It almost felt like what was the point here? You know what I mean? But my qualms with how it's set up aside, let's get into how the shit went down. So they move in. But we didn't really see them enter the house, so we see them already there. But we get told that they have to essentially live basic. They have a grocery budget every week they have to sort out. They make their own bread. They have a garden they keep up with. They have chickens that they feed and keep up with. They hand wash their own clothes. This kind of stuff. They're living fairly basic. This is before the days where getting on a reality show is a little more cushy. Now all they have to do is their laundry essentially. Everybody else, you don't have to do a lot. There's no house chores anymore in Big Brother. It's basically just like do your dishes and your laundry and shit. But other than that, like, be entertaining. But this was like, let's because Big Brother at its core, from how it started, was like, let's watch people have to live together, kind of like the real world, right? We're gonna put a bunch of people, because the real world kind of started this whole thing. And now that I've watched the real world, but unlike the real world, there's people leaving and getting voted out, whereas the real world, everyone's there for the entirety of the stay. However, unlike the real world, I didn't find a whole lot of these people supremely interesting. I like some of the character or some of the contestants thus far, but the real world, like, we really spent time, because that was the point of the show, right? But here I feel like we don't get as much of a character study and we don't get as much of a competition, and it's somewhere in the middle. Like I said, I don't dislike it, but as far as like, if I'm gonna watch Big Brother, I want, I like the format that we do, that Canada does, Australia does now. I like the contestants to have to eliminate each other, because that causes a lot of tense situations and scheming and things. It makes to watch the episode a little more interesting. There's more things happening, and even then, with the wrong cast, we could still get boringness. But with this, even with an interesting cast, there's not a lot going on. People are just living day to day, and we're getting too much footage. We're getting too much of nothing. So I watched like 7 episodes, if you include like the updates, so like 5-minute update episodes. I watched a good deal, and the next episode starts the nom, so we don't even get the noms in this podcast. So it was like I said, obviously I'll be watching more modern, and maybe it'll be a little more interesting. But right now, it's nothing to do with the cast. It's primarily to do with the structure, because it doesn't. There's 2 ways it can go and be good, and it doesn't go either way. It goes in the middle, and it's just not tickling my fancy per se at the moment. So we meet the contestants. Anna she's a former nun who left the convent because she is a lesbian and kind of discovered that during her stay in the convent. And obviously the church did not agree with her wanting to be with other nuns. So she left. We meet Craig. He runs his own construction company. And he's also a very avid bodybuilder. He's very into health and wellness. Okay, so and he is kind of the goofball, high energy prankster of the group. He's the more vocal personality for sure. And then we meet Caroline, who is, I didn't really get what she does for a living. But she is the oldest of the group, but she's not like, it's not like, like Pat and Brenda on The Amazing Race, or like Frank and, or Dave and Margaretta on The Amazing Race. Like, she's not older, she's just, compared to this group of 20-something-year-olds, she is the eldest, but still fits in rather well with the group. But the thing about Caroline that gets me is her laugh, and it's bad, and I won't even try to imitate it, but it's got a pitch to it that's kind of grating, and it just keeps going. Like, it's long. That, as lovely as someone can be, that would wear on me. Like, I don't know if I could do all that all the time. And they also have 1 hour of hot water per day. Between 10 people, it's like 10-minute showers, roughly, of hot water, right? So you get about 6 minutes of hot water. So you have to really take a quick shower. I'm someone who doesn't take a long time in the shower, so this wouldn't be a problem for me. Just do your business and get out. But some people, the shower is where they wake up and really soak in that I gotta get moving thing. So they take really long showers, because that's how they that's a ritual. And for them, this must be hell. But for me, quick showers is what I normally do. So then we meet Darren, who is the single father, but he says he actually has a decent relationship with his baby mama. And he's kind of like, man, being on TV is going to be really weird. And a lot of these people are going to feel that way for a while. And he's the only guy in the house that has children. So, he's not going to be able to share, usually in a Big Brother season, there's multiple parents, of various ages. And something that can bond someone is if two people have kids, they have more to talk about because they have the big part of their lives to discuss. So he doesn't have that right now. And both his two daughters, who are fairly young, one is about to turn 1, so he's got the little kids. Then we meet Andrew, who is a mechanic for race cars. Mel, who is the businesswoman of the group. Nicholas, I'm not really sure what he does per se, but we get what he used to do later, but they didn't really say what he did for a living. But Nicholas and Caroline are doing this Reiki ritual, and it reminded me of Survivor Cook Islands, when Cowboy does that headache remedy thing to Brad. That's what I got flashbacks to Cowboy, who is I wish Cowboy was on BBUK, because he would probably provide a little more entertainment. And then we meet Thomas, who's the country boy. He's from Ireland. And he's a bit shy and kind of worried about fitting in with this group. Then we get Sada, the hippie, who is kind of the black sheep of her family, and she wants to be a yoga instructor. That is the type of person that is about to enter this house. And everyone's talking about because Anna is or Anna, I think it's Anna, I think that's how you pronounce it anyway. Since she is gay, there a lot of people are talking about who else in the house could be gay or like what being gay means to people or whatever. And obviously this is 2000. We still things were still pretty grim in the LGBTQ community. Uh, Not as bad as it was, I would say, back in the real world for 1992, but it's early 2000s. We're still not great. So being uh, gay on a reality show is still like a token thing. They typically only casted like it was the same thing with uh, people of color. They would only cast like one or two in the entire cast. Same thing with gay people. They would typically only cast like one, like typically a gay guy would be the thing they would try to cast. Um, so it kind of it's hard to make up that ground when you're the only person, the only person of color or the only gay person. It kind of isolates you. It makes it a little harder for you to find common ground like immediately. And a lot of bonds, important bonds, and social strategy games are made early. So, obviously that's something like CBS is going to do, like 50% of the cast to be people of color, which is great. It's a huge milestone in race relations. But a long way, between this and now. But there's a lot of talk about that. The guys, the girls are all in the girls have a lot of meetings in the girls' room. Like their bedrooms are like gender designated. So the girls always have gossip talks at night, and the guys are trying to hear what they're saying and who they're saying what about. And Darren's like, I got this great idea. I got a grand idea. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. And like his great idea is to make a clay dick because they had to make clay balls for a tattoo. He's like, let's make a clay dick, put it outside their door. I'm like, that's your great idea? Like that's like the grand thing that you think's going to like it's okay, I guess. It's kind of funny in a juvenile way, like but the guys when they get together, it's like they're, like prepubescent boys at summer camp. So like, of course we make a clay dick, and we put a clay dick outside their door, and so the girls see it, and they're kind of like, kind of have a laugh about it, but like, it's not it's not this grand thing. I think that Darren made it out to be. And they spend most of their initial grocery funds on alcohol because, and I understand the sentiment. One, there's a group, so you're going to want to have a party. And two, most of these people live alone. They have their own places. They're only used to feeding themselves. So, you don't really think about how much it costs to feed 10 people, especially when you're making things from scratch. You don't just buy a loaf of bread. You got to make the bread. Ingredients go in the bread. Ingredients cost money. You don't necessarily think about that if that's not something you do. I know how much it costs to feed me. That's not a lot of money. But if it was me and 9 of my friends, that's a grocery bill. So you got to think about all that stuff. But they're gonna get drunk. And Sada is teaching yoga classes at the house, which, when she said she wanted to be a yoga teacher, I knew. There's every season of reality show, there's always somebody in the house that leads some sort of exercise regime. But Sada does the yoga and Caroline does the actual exercise portion. But there's always at least one person that makes a group thing to do. So, Nicola is, we meet her, and she's kind of the alternative, artsy girl. Like, she She's an artist who, she shaves her head. She's got the piercings and the tattoos. She's at, for the time period, a very free-minded, like I would say the alternative lifestyle at the time, or what you would call it, or whatever. She's a very free spirit. And I think of very good casting. I would have casted her too, honestly. Like, I see her on there, and I'm like, yes, that makes a lot of sense why she's on the show. And she decides that she's going to take, put clay all over her body and make a body print against the wall, like, while being naked. So and everyone's, like, helping her, like, push against the wall. And Mel and a couple of the guys decide they're going to make ass prints on the wall. And then Craig comes and he makes, like, a dick print on the wall. So, everybody kind of joins in. The only people that don't are Caroline, Darren, and Tom. Tom because he's too shy, and Darren because he's like, I don't want my kids to see that. Fair enough. I understand. You don't want your girls to see naked on TV. That's I understand him not necessarily taking part in that task. So that was like an interesting. And then Craig and Nicola run in the shower and they're like washing each other off. There was some brief, and that's the thing about BBUK that's different from the US is that we blur out nudity. They do not. So it's odd to see just like, someone running around with their tits out, not blurred out on a major network, especially in 2000. But nevertheless, I mean, it shows how little, I guess, Britain cares about censorship. Is that they're like, we'll just tell them there's nudity there, and then we just fucking show whatever we want. And it's like, oh damn, fair enough. It was a very brave choice by the British Broadcasting Network to show the tits and the arse with the clay on the reality show. What Tom does participate in is him and Craig shave their heads with Nicola. And I don't think they look too bad. The only thing when people shave their heads together, it makes it a little harder, especially when in the first episode of the show, to tell people apart because, like, obviously Nicola, it's not that hard to tell her apart, but like Tom and Craig now both have bald heads, so it's like, how do I tell them apart without knowing their person? You know what I'm saying? Like, now I know enough about them and their nature and their body language to tell who it is, but first episode makes it a little more difficult. So they shave their heads, and Mel and Darren talk about being the what she's like. Are you surprised that there's only we're the only two people of color on the show? And he's like, it doesn't really bother me. And she's like, it kind of bothers me a little bit, but it's the status quo of the time. Like, she understands that it's a thing, but it sucks that it's a thing. And it's actually interesting enough that we're having this conversation so early, that the network didn't shy away from it, that they actually showed that conversation. Nicholas kind of like, I didn't get the whole comment, but because it's pretty low quality, the thing I watched, it looks like it was like a VHS transfer, but Nicholas kind of jokingly, passive-aggressively calls Darren a drug dealer, or like asks if he's a drug dealer. And the same thing happened with Julie and Heather B on The Real World. I'm like, why do people just keep randomly assuming people are drug dealers? And also, like, that's not like, hi, I'm Mac, I sell drugs. Like, that doesn't come up in introductory conversation, right? So just a weird thing, and just common sense should tell you not to say that, But it's happened twice. Of the 3 reality shows I've watched consecutively, it's happened twice. Interesting, right? Yeah, maybe it is a much more common thing that happens on these things than I even know, right? And everybody kind of talks about that comment and what they, and Darren's not super bothered by it. But everyone else, I was kind of like, where did that come from, And Nicholas is talking with Andy, or Andrew. I call Andrew Andy, and I'm going to call Nicholas Nick for a decent amount of this podcast. So, just know that's who I'm talking about if that comes up. So Andy and Nicholas are talking about who they think's going to get nominated and evicted first, and they kind of both think that Caroline should, because they find her to be useless. But I'm like, this isn't like a Big Brother competition based game, so I don't understand how she's useless to your cause. And they have a conversation like an alliance. Like, I think the two would do well in an actual American Big Brother season. In the end of the episode, they run out of toilet paper, and they don't have any toilet paper till the next grocery week. So they quickly get their comeuppance for spending too much money on alcohol. And then that brings us to the day 4 update. There's a lot more sex talk, and that's there's a difference between Britain and America with the comfortability in speaking about sexual content, right? In America, it's still very like, ooh, be ashamed of your sexuality, right? Conceal that shit. Keep that on the inside. Don't talk about that, right? And in Britain, from what I can tell from watching some of their shows, it's you can talk about a lot of younger British people, both men and women, are very openly promiscuous, right? And that's good, right? I find that refreshing that they are trying to normalize, being single and promiscuous. As long as you're not cheating on someone. Like if you're single and you want to sleep around, by all means, fucking do that. Fuck whoever you want to, as long as they agree to it. You shouldn't have to think you need to get tied down and be in this long relationship when you're young. Like, if you, it's okay to test the waters, right? It's okay to live your life. So, that's something about the British culture I find, like, I wish this country would adopt, is that idea that, it's okay to be a sexual natured person. As they talk a lot about things they like and things they've done. And Nicholas brings up that he used to be a male escort. And that it wasn't always sex. It was, just hanging out, having dinner, having conversations with these women. And if the person, the man in the situation, enjoyed them enough, they would offer, and if you want to get sexual, it'll just cost like an extra like 120 quid or whatever. It's kind of a thing of like, if the night is not going well, then they end it there. But if it's going in a good direction, then the offer is on the table. So it's an interesting thing. And he says Craig couldn't be a male escort because he's too talkative and too energetic. And I'm like, it's interesting that he used to be a male escort, but why did you have to like subtly talk shit about Craig, like, while discussing that? It was random. Like, Craig was like in the living room and they're outside. It was weird that he brought him up. And Mel has like 1,000 questions about it. She's like, how many girls did you sleep with? And he's like, I don't know, like 23. She's like, 23? That's a lot. I thought it was going to be like 5. And he's like, well, I wanted to make money off of it. And she's like, well, did they come? Which just reminds me of like that scene from Mallrats when they're talking about the people going down on the airplane and everybody's masturbating before the plane crashes. And he's like, well did they come? It's such a strange thing to ask, right? So she's asking, like, if they came, and like, did he stay the night? Did he do this? Did he do that? And then we see Caroline is brushing her teeth in the kitchen because you got 10 people using one bathroom, and this house isn't like the Big Brother houses of today. Now Big Brother houses across the board are fairly large, right? Multiple levels, a lot of rooms, a lot of space, right? the bathroom is fairly large too, to accommodate a large amount of people. Uh, like in the Big US house, like there's a small room with a door for the toilet, right? But the open area has like a couch and sinks and things. It's more open and more accommodational for a large number of people. But like for 10 people, they're living in a house that's maybe not too much larger than a modular, and they have to have a section off for the control room and the people running the cameras. So, you know, yeah, 10 people in a modular, right? Not a lot of room to live. And so we move into the day 6 update. So everyone's, going about their own thing, and they're running low on supplies. Like they're even out of sugar to make bread because sugar activates yeast. And I actually did not know that because I've never made my own bread. It's the small things you take for granted in a modern lifestyle. But yeah, I was like, I didn't know sugar was part of making bread. So interesting, learn something there. Nicholas and Andrew are having another one of their strategy talks, which again, very strange that so much strategy is being talked in a game that features very little use for it, right? But they're basically just talking about the women potentially teaming up against the men. And there's a lot. I mean, every single show that features people being voted out, there's a lot of, or even just eliminated in any way, there's a lot of men against the women talk, right? A lot of talk about, which sex is better, or like, it's if you're a man, it's a little easy for you to work with other men as compared to women, right? Same thing with being a woman. It's easier to work with other women than men right off the bat, right? And obviously, there's exceptions to rules. Some guys are more fond of women, and some women are more fond of working with men. But just as a nature, as a immediate thing, it's a thought that enters your mind right off the bat. And I prefer that not be a theme. I hate it when the guys team up to take out the girls, and I hate it when the girls team up to take out the guys. Do what's best for you in the game, right? It shouldn't matter, male or female. Work with who you got to work with to make it the furthest. So I kind of hate that being spliced in, but here there's very little to do with it. You can promise to only vote, nominate men and women, but at the end of the day, if all the men vote for women and all the women vote for men, there's still going to be a man and woman, and it's up to the country what happens. So, there's very little control you can take for this conversation to really matter. And the group all goes in the DR to ask for shit that they do not get. They want more to drink, and the diary room's like, get out of here. And so Anna basically makes a little coup to tell Darren that BB has tasked him with going in and cleaning the chicken coop because Darren is terrified of chickens. And so he buys it, and he goes out there, and everyone kind of like has to help him like do it, and like he's freaking out the whole time. And then he goes into the Big Brother diary room, and he's like, "This is a dick move, guys. I'm afraid of chickens." And they're like, "Yeah, Big Brother never sent a task for that." And he's like, "What?" No, he's like, "So they pulled a joke on me," and they're like, "Big Brother doesn't have jokes." So basically, he finds out that they duped him, and we don't get a resolution to that scene until the end of the next episode. Like in the next episode, they go back, talk about other shit, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, that Darren thing. Here's how that turned out." And I was like, damn, like, shouldn't that, like, if you end an episode on that note, shouldn't the next episode start picking up on that note? It was just a weird editing choice. There's a lot of odd editing choices, and a lot of, like, it's like Quentin Tarantino made this, edited this thing together, because the story just jumps around like a motherfucker. So we get the first week recap show. Darren is missing his kids, as he would. And Andy and Mel are starting to spend a lot of time together, and the girls are speculating on whether or not they will become an item And the girls, and we'll talk about it, seem to be a little jealous that Mel has a good relationship with the men in the house. The other girls are not, I guess, having an easy time with that. And they're mad that Mel is. It's like Caroline and Sada in particular are always shit talking Mel. But in that typical passive aggressive way. Like, oh, I love her. She's lovely. She's a great girl. I think she's flirting with all the men and she's trying to seduce them. It's just easier for her to do. And it's like, you're like low key calling her a whore. And it's unnecessary because like she's just like, and it shows her talking to a lot of the guys. It's just casual conversation. You know, if you want to talk to the guys, go talk to the guys. Don't make it such a big deal, you know? It's not an 8th grade dance. And Thomas feels a little bit on the outside because he's a bit cautious. You know, it's not easy for him to fall into a group setting. He's not an outgoing guy. So he's struggling early on to make connections with people. And if this were, you know, an HOH type of game, I think he would be nominated early because people don't have a bond with him, and it's easier for them to send him home. And I think he'll even be nominated for eviction as first round, but I don't know if the country will let him go. So the men do another one of their weird. I think Darren had another grand idea. And they decide to get down to their underwear and get in all the girls' beds, and then get up and leave and laugh about it. Is like I don't understand the concept of that one. And the girl's like, oh, they're like little boys in there doing their little childish games. And I'm like, but what exactly is that? Like, what was the point of that? It's not that I'm like, oh, they shouldn't have done that. That's wrong. It's just I didn't find it funny. I was just perplexed by the situation. So I guess that's a thing that happened. And Caroline's doing her exercise class, and Thomas joins it because he's trying to make those bonds. And like I said, if this was a game where the individual could control the fate, Thomas, I think, would be a classic first eviction because he's not. It's a lot like Ramona in Survivor Borneo. She didn't make connections until right before she was voted out. So it was a lot, Thomas could have had that arc had it not taken fucking 2 weeks. And he could be the first one out still. I don't know yet. I don't even know who's nominated yet. But he just hasn't had a lot of, what's helped him, I think, right now is that we get a lot of him, and they're talking like, Thomas is very shy, and then his DR, he's like, I'm very shy, and I'm trying my best to, like this little scene here of doing the class, like he's trying to fit in, and that might hit with the audience at home to want to keep him, to kind of want to protect him, whereas if it was up to the people in the house, he hasn't made relationships with the people in the house, but right now they're, they don't matter, the country does, so, it's an interesting dichotomy of like, if this were the Big Brother that Americans are used to watching, how differently this might play out. And Mel thinks that Andy and Nicholas are playing the game too hard. They're having all their daily talks about who's the weak link and who they need to vote for and things of that nature. And I agree. Like I said, if this were American Big Brother, they would be doing a fantastic job. Especially if one of them was HOH. These would be the conversations to be having. But there's not a whole lot they can do besides vote. So I don't understand what, like, besides saying, like, oh, we should vote this way and, like, be done with it. I don't understand the daily strategy conversations because there's not a lot of consequence to it, right? It just makes you look paranoid, right? And Nicola talks about her bisexual experiences, and a lot of the girls say that. Sada says that by nature, artists are bi-curious because of their creative nature. And I guess that's an interesting thought process, At the very least, a lot of artists are comfortable with their sexuality, or, not they're not closed-minded in that nature. I think it's a little bit of a broad assumption, but, not necessarily something I find offensive. But she talks about, getting with this girl who, left college because she was ashamed of the bisexual encounter or whatever. Nicola is such a fun character. I enjoy her and all of her stories and just how she embraces the concept of the show, right? She's just open with everything and just ready to try to make something television worthy. So then we cut back to the Darren about the chicken stuff, and I'm like, finally, I get some resolution to this fucking chicken thing. And he took the joke well, laughs about it. Everybody has fun with it. It could have gone sideways. It could have gone real sideways. But it didn't. He had a good time with it. And Sada also talks about the hippie girl, talk about hippie stuff. She's a vegetarian. And she's like, yeah, she's like, I've traveled the world, if I don't even kill bugs. Like, I ask them to leave, and they get my energy, and they leave. And I'm like, that's not a fucking thing, okay? Mosquitoes are not something you can fucking bargain with. Spiders and snakes don't exactly just, take a hint. It's kind of a dumb fucking thing that she said. And then she talks about, I've traveled the world and I met this person. And it reminds me of how Sean Penn talked in Team America World Police. I've been to Iraq and I've seen exactly what the corporations don't see. And they're being all corporation-y. And that's exactly how she came off to me. And really, Sada is the only person in the cast at the moment I don't enjoy watching. Because she just seems a bit snarky to me, right? So then they get word that they lost their clay task because a couple of their clay bowls broke. But they only wagered 20 pounds, which roughly equated is around $30 American. So they didn't lose a lot, but still, they're going to be a little tighter. And they need toilet paper, so... And Andy is suspicious because Nicholas is going around and having a lot of one-on-one conversations with other house guests. And he's getting fairly concerned about that. And so he kind of confronts him and is like, listen, man, you're coming off as paranoid. And Nicholas is like, no, I think you're being kind of paranoid about this. You need to just, let things happen as they happen. And I thought that was a very interesting, he took the situation and he just flipped it. Like I said, I think Nicholas would be very good at American Big Brother because he's a very good manipulator. But he's doing a lot of manipulating here that doesn't really make much of a difference. And Andy and Mel promise to align because they're starting to kind of like each other, maybe romantically. And of course, you're not going to vote out the person you're interested in having sexual relations with. And that's where the episode ends there. Like I said, it's interesting so far, but I'm very interested in where the nominations will go. And once that happens, if there will be any more drama coming about and all that business. But stay tuned next time when we dive right into day 8, where the psychologists are coming in to talk about this and being all douchey. And we'll cover through, hopefully, maybe the first eviction. Let me know down in the comments also what you think about this format, what you think about the events we've been discussing that have transpired, and if you've seen this show, what do you think? Even, maybe, if a couple of you listening are from the UK, what are your perspective on your version of Big Brother, Also, guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, do all that business. Got a lot of podcasts and things coming in 2021, and I would not want any of you guys to miss that. Thank you so much for supporting me on this journey. And most of all, stay safe, stay nerdy. I'm Mac Taylor, and good night.